and Media Samosa. Today we are here to discuss open web. What does the concept mean in today's digitally enhanced context, and what are the applications of it in the media, advertising, marketing, and business world. So, without taking any more of your time, I'd like to invite our panelist for the first session. That is, what is open web. I'd like to invite Shouneel Charles, MD, Outbrain India. A seasoned digital and media professional, Shouneel brings over 2 decades of experience in setting up large digital ecosystems, digital news publishing models, and internet-based mobile businesses. Welcome, Shouneel.
Thanks, Lonnie. Good to be here.
Great, same here. I would like to next invite on stage Siddharth Hegde, MD, Ethinos. Siddharth is a marketer, entrepreneur, and strategist. Prior to Ethinos, he has worked with an array of brands such as GE Capital, Genpact Gardner, and Xerox.
Thanks, Saloni. Nice to be here.
Thanks, Siddharth.
Thanks, Saloni.
Hi.
Great.
Hi. It is really an honor to have you both with us today. And, we'd like to straight get to the topic. We see we have a great set of audience with us, right? So I'll just start off with it. So guys, the overarching discussion today is about the open web, right? So I would like the panelists to give us a perspective on what is open web exactly, what would be the definition and description of it, and why is it important to each one of us who uses internet today? Maybe we could start with you, Shouneel.
So, the idea of setting this up and, collaborating with Social Samosa was to get this, messaging out / talk about how important the open web is, like you mentioned. And Siddharth and I are here to demystify some aspects around that. And of course, we will extend this panel into, some additional discussions around digital marketing, based on, Siddharth's fantastic experience in this space. So just in a nutshell, and I want to be mindful of time because I know we have a panel following this. So we'll keep track of time with you, Sidoni. But quickly, what the open web essentially is and why is it important? It's a collection of the open, basically royalty-free technology which enables the web. Okay, so all of us surf the internet, we consume content. So the amazing online experiences like, surfing the web to read news articles, trusted journalism, streaming television, a vast array of online e-commerce experiences. These are all sort of elements that make up the open web. It's also very transparent. There's a lot of democracy. There's no sort of oversight from just a couple of organizations or, the government. And as we proceed into the future, the digital and the internet is going to be part of everything we, it's going to be in our phones, in our cars, in our homes. So it's more and more important to keep the net open and sort of democratized and not in the control of just a few, large tech companies, in a sense where it's going right. It's not a bad thing. They're great companies. They do great work, but it's just sort of taking the power away from the users. And lastly, the outlook is extremely important, and we have to ensure that the future of the internet is something that, enriches the lives of the users and is accessible to everyone. And that's what proponents or people who, believe that the open web is important will keep talking about and trying to push, as the future comes our way. Siddharth, over to you.
From my perspective, I guess very simple. Maybe it's easier to actually talk about what what it's not. I mean, from a world is what I would say that let's look at for a second what a walled garden is. A walled garden is maybe a very closed ecosystem where all the operations, the formats, what you can do, can't do, and all of those things are actually controlled by a single ecosystem operator. An example could be somebody like a Facebook. So I would say, apart from and aside from these few large, powerful, walled gardens, the rest of it is what I would call the open web. And from my perspective, if you think about the type of stuff we do on a day-to-day basis, if you look at our behavior, ideally, we start consuming content online probably from, shortly after waking up, maybe listen to the internet radio, listen to something while commuting for those of us who are commuting these days, maybe see display ads while we are working, maybe listen to an audio ad while listening to a podcast. There is a series of this type of stuff where, we are moving from platform to platform, website to website. And, all of this is what I would call the open web, where, this type of open storytelling, this type of, jumping from platform to platform is something that would only be possible on the open web, on a closed ecosystem, a walled garden. Something like this to me wouldn't really be possible. And from my perspective as a digital marketer, I'm thinking in terms of, given that there is a lot of scrutiny on marketers, on their budgets and those types of things, I feel that the open web is perhaps better enabled, for leveraging the true power of, data-driven marketing, for quantifying success, better able to do attribution, better, maybe array of insights available at every stage of the digital journey. Also, in that sense, I think a lot of brands, today want deeper insights into their consumers. And what's happening today is that, if I think the open web is better enabled to deliver these deeper data-driven type insights. And I think, in that sense, a walled garden is very controlled in terms of what type of material you would have, what type of stuff you wouldn't have. And as Sunil mentioned, I think there's a disproportionate amount of power that would be in the hands of a few people when it comes to, very, strong walled gardens. So I think this may not necessarily promote as much innovation. The playing field will be skewed in favor of a couple of large players or a few large players. So I think while these ecosystems, the overall user experience is great and that type of thing, I think it needs to run in parallel to the open web.
That does make sense, right? And while we are discussing open web and its counterparts, if I may have a follow-up question. So in your experience, how have you seen the internet and digital advertising world evolve in the past few years, especially from an India perspective?
So I've been doing this for about 12 years now, early days of, when internet sort of came into India. I've just seen it, grow leaps and bounds year on year. And, it used to be sort of a small element in media plans, an extension to, what people were doing for their brands in terms of spends and marketing. But now digital is actually front and center. So that evolution has been very exciting. The numbers are mind-boggling globally. I think, 2021, this $400 billion was spent on digital ads. Just in India in the next year, the estimate is around 30,000 crores will be sort of mobilized on digital. This is as per the recent Denso report. So the thing is, it's definitely big and it's snowballing into something bigger. The elements also have been moving the fastest. And I just want to touch upon the fact that the thing which the sort of the ingredient which enables this rapid growth and adoption of digital advertising has essentially been on a bedrock of good tech. Okay, the tech has been phenomenal and it's continuously advanced, and has helped marketers reshape marketing strategies almost, year on year, quarter on quarter. There's always some new amazing tech platform or, some opportunity which comes up which helps marketers. The entire ethos, which the digital marketing is based on, is to show the right ad to the right person at the right time. That's what we all strive to achieve. And as and when the billions of users have come on, the tech has kept in pace to ensure that the advertising opportunities, there's a vast array of them. Some are great, some are intrusive, some are complicated. Like, I'm a big fan of native advertising, where the content blends, where the ad blends with the content you're consuming. And, that's something which is probably one of the best user experiences. And so, there's a mix of everything. But in a sense, I think the India story is also more interesting because India sort of skips generations in this space. We're very strong in tech. The content creators are strong in tech. The The internet has been a massive boon for Indians in the last couple of years, and pretty much everyone is connected internet and the mobile phone. So I think we've got all the ingredients for a fantastic digital economy. And then riding on top of that, of course, advertising, marketing, media is also booming. Siddharth?
I think one example as an agency, when we started out, one simple example was, the first couple of clients we started working with. And when there was a review, the person who actually logged in for the review was actually an intern. So that kind of said in 2010-11 where digital marketing was. And now during the pandemic, we are very often seeing CEOs and CMOs for sure, seeing a lot of CEOs actually get involved in the digital plans, get involved in, the digital identity of the company. What are they seen as? How are they acquiring? The reviews, the annual planning, etc. Just the change in levels of who you're seeing involved is, to me, very telling in terms of what we're seeing happen from a digital perspective, especially from an acceptance perspective. There were so many retail and other brands who all of a sudden, for whom digital used to be, we will also do digital, and there was this small disconnected team, and all of a sudden core requirements of marketing are that digital is a part of marketing. It's not, separately we also do digital and also do paid advertising and this thing. So I think that change in mindset to me is like the biggest thing that's happened over the last few years. I think then there's the very obvious trends in terms of, we're seeing a lot more, after the first 200 to 50 million who maybe understand and can consume content in English. There is that whole this thing where large, very diversified types of content available to people to consume, in regional languages. And it's not just in Hindi, but, you'll get it in Bhojpuri, you'll get it in various, this thing. I mean, natively, for example, I know I speak a language called Tulu. And my parents, grandparents, and on our, home groups, the most excitement is when a piece of content actually comes up in our native language. That's when people tend to get most enthused and most excited. And then that's clearly, I think, apart from that, we're also starting to see some interesting trends start to happen. I mean, just an example, something I was listening to, and in a conversation I was having during the lockdown, the typical this thing was most of us were at home, and one of the people I know actually happened to mention that their son attended a concert on the metaverse while gaming. In one of the games, there was actually a concert. And the interesting thing is, for me, if you ask me, what's your first concert? I may say Bryan Adams or something of that sort. Now, when this guy talks about his son's first concert experience, to him, it is actually a concert his kid watched on the metaverse. It was a very well-produced, this thing, the whole thing, but the experience is very different. So when somebody in that generation is thinking, concert, and I'm thinking concert, there's a huge difference. But I think we kind of need to, in that sense, learn from what some of the stuff that is actually happening around us, beyond the standard trends in terms of growth, smartphones, adoption, video, vernacular, all of those things. I think there is a lot of changes happening in terms of how people behave. And I think we need to kind of be in tune with some of that.
True, that's true. In fact, when we speak about change in mindset, I remember back in 2011-12, we would do headlines like, digital, still the red-headed stepchild. And from there to having panels around just on digital, we've come a really long way as an industry. On that note, I'd like to move on to my next question. That is, if you could share some of your thoughts on the current state of digital advertising in India, right? So it could be any trends that you have seen, or the whole debate between programmatic and performance versus brand advertising, or ROAS versus ROI based models, so anything in that direction.
So clearly, Saloni, my read is that India is becoming very good at the digital marketing and digital performance sort of expertise. And what I have seen from the marketer standpoint is that clearly almost all the briefs, and Siddharth will agree with me, are very ROI oriented. People know exactly what they want. They know the platforms which will deliver it. There's a high level of asks from their side. Just to give you a sense, since I work for a digital platform like Outbrain, these are sort of absolute mandatory asks from us when we talk to agencies like Siddharth or clients, etc., who want to advertise, they want engaging ad units, they want multiple formats, very rich contextual targeting, brand safety is a major issue, and all outcomes are based on measurement. The data which you provide back to the advertiser or the agency is crucial. So there are few players in this space, who have this entire menu card, to offer back. And Outbrain is primarily a native content recommendation engine. So most of our technology is oriented towards publishers, where while someone is consuming content on a publisher website, we recommend the best piece of content the person can see, and within that feed we also have some amount of advertising. So as this shift is happening towards performance programmatic, even companies are pivoting from just being a native recommendation engine. We also are now increasing our scope and breadth to provide video solutions, to provide header bidding, become better and better at performance advertising delivery based on what our partners want.
Yeah, Siddharth, I'd like to throw the same question to you.
So from my perspective, I think, one of the big things that digital has enabled is that, we have a significantly better understanding of the consumer. There was a time when, brands would typically, we are taking on movie star XYZ as our ambassador, and that's more or less it, and the same, tagline across the country would kind of work. And there's that very clear understanding now that, there isn't one large homogeneous India, or even just India and Bharat, in that sense. India is like a continent, and if you understand these different audiences better, it's in that sense, it's maybe like marketing into Europe, where you'll have lots of diverse audiences, lots of different age groups. A movie star who's going to work for and as your brand ambassador in North India is probably going to be relatively unknown and unliked, and not very popular with an audience in South India. And the same thing, if you're going after a segment where you're going after, say, a relatively younger segment, then going after a older movie star and using him is likely not to work. I mean, people are going to be like, that guy is advertising a game. I mean, this doesn't really make sense. So I think the first thing that's happened is that there is a significantly better understanding of the consumer, and basis this, what's happening from and I'm saying this across programmatic, performance, brand, all of this, that digital in that sense is enabling precision segmentation and analytics at scale that we have never really seen earlier. So in that sense, you're seeing creatives, you're seeing brands actually do not tens, 15s, but literally thousands of cohorts of data, thousands of different segments, and you have technology which is enabling creatives which are done specifically for each cohort, messaging which is done for each specific cohort, maybe even the language is changed for each cohort depending on who that person is, what type of stuff. I mean, just simple example could be a travel brand targeting you. I mean, if for example a consumer is single, the imagery is that of a single person. If the person's a double income, no kids, it's a couple. And whereas if it's a family, there's a family image. If it's relatively older couple or something of that sort, an empty nester, then they're getting an older this thing. So I think across all of them, I think whether it's programmatic, performance, or brand, you're seeing that large scale segmentation. You're also seeing that from the data that is being generated here, brands are also able to do a lot of predictive stuff where they get a better sense of what are the various levers that typically impact performance. So as Shouneel mentioned as well, that we are very clearly seeing brands align themselves to very, very clear objectives, where there is, I'm looking at launching, I'm looking at acquisition, I'm looking at leads, whatever it is as a thing. So I think from that sense, the importance of data, to my mind, is one of the biggest things. You're seeing a lot of people focus on stuff like data clean rooms, just better data visualization, automation of the entire reporting process. So, people can focus on insights and those types. And that's across the entire, up and down, irrespective of what type of performance. Also, I think, what data is enabling is that on your existing marketing spends also, people are able to get better ROIs, so by doing that slight additional spend and slight effort and discipline around, setting up their data practice, they are able to, significantly improve their ROI on, their marketing spends. And then I think, during the lockdown and during the pandemic, there has been a lot more pressure on measurement, on ROI. So I think that is, and I think data is also enabling that better, or correct channel selection. I think brands may decide that they want to play in multiple channels, but where do they move a bulk of their spend? So that type of, attribution, etc., is happening significantly better because of, data.
Thank you, Siddharth. So as a follow-up to this question, when we're speaking about data and the overall ecosystem, Shouneel, if I'd like to follow up, what do you think is the role of large tech platforms, in the current ecosystem?
So, sorry, like I mentioned earlier, there is no digital advertising without great technology. Okay, and we're lucky that at a global level, fantastic technologies have spread across the world, and all, of course, have helped hit India quickly. And smart marketers and agencies like Siddharth are very quick to adapt. And these guys have also over time learned the needs of the advertiser and the market. There's the whole list of things which Siddharth mentioned and I mentioned earlier. Brand safety, data, measurability. The entire package is sort of brought to your doorstep to enable Siddharth and his team to deliver what they have for their advertisers. So I think the ecosystem of the content creator is connected to the consumer by these tech platforms in the middle. And advertising is a layer which is riding on top of the tech platforms and which is servicing both sides of this equation. So I think it's tremendously important. But I just want to circle back to what we started this conversation with regards to the open web. The current sort of landscape has got really pushed to a couple of the walled gardens, which is something which is great. Those guys are good at what they do. They're delivering fantastic results. But still, in order to sort of preserve what the internet is and keep it open and keep it as an open playing field, ensure that, everyone gets a share of the pie, which enables them to grow their businesses, etc. And not all the revenue is sort of getting diverted to just a couple of players in the ecosystem. I think, that there is a lot of great tech out there, and it'll spread over time. But technology is ubiquitous to this business. I think it's probably the most important piece, and then all the other layers of creativity and branding and all basically follow the tech.
Makes sense. It does. Actually, Siddharth, Shouneel, I have individual questions for both of you, but before that, I'd like to take a user question that has come to us. So that is, can you both shed some light on the upcoming scenario of the cookie-less future, right? How is it going to change the current scheme of things? What steps are stakeholders like yourself making to prepare for this eventuality?
So slowly, we'll be mindful of time. I know we've got 5 minutes. I'll let Siddharth take a stab on this. And after that, I can probably close with Outbrain's perspective on how we are approaching it. It's something extremely important, as the open web evolves. And it's a scenario which is coming our way very soon. And it's essentially just the big question everyone has is, how will we target ads, without the cookie? But, there are solutions and there are workarounds. Siddharth, you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, I think I firstly want to just start by saying that, this is going to impact advertisers. It's going to impact publishers. It's going to impact ad networks, so there is going to be that significant impact. There is going to be, maybe lower conversions, lesser amount of audience data. So I think there is going to be significant amount of, impact for advertisers where, they may see more ad frauds. They may not necessarily get the best in terms of attribution, etc. From a publisher's perspective, maybe, slightly lower traffic, lower CPMs, maybe the inability to do cross-device attribution, etc. From an ad network's perspective, just less trust in programmatic, its effectiveness. More people maybe shifting from CPM type, bids to more CPC and CPA based campaigns. I think so. So there is going to be significant impact. I think from my perspective, brands need to just start planning. This is going to happen maybe in 2023, but I mean, we just need to start thinking in terms of, maybe more probabilistic planning, maybe more other these things in terms of just getting other ad tech in place. Also focusing in a big way on first party data, because I think today, there is so much data available that we have not necessarily, made the best of our first party data. We've not necessarily set up our infrastructure to leverage our first party data. So those are a couple of things that I think we should start in terms of doing.
So slowly at a holistic level, see, it's bound to happen. I'm not worried about it, because you generally things find a way around challenges when they appear. And, in all probability, it's a good thing. It's the right thing, in the evolution of where we are heading. And the death of the cookie is, is something the entire industry is aware of. So, I think there's a hell of a lot of tech, which is, very, very quickly coming together to, solve for this. For me, I think contextual intelligence, which is, the people who have the data around what consumers are consuming and, how to leverage the context to showcase the ad more than just where a cookie has been dropped. This is going to emerge as one of the major new currencies in media. And that's where I think, Outbrain as a organization is really, really, doing a lot of efforts to, provide, not just advertisers, but even independent media owners, like Siddharth said, even, the publishers and content creators, that ecosystem will also get affected, with traffic drops and, revenue impacts, etc. So there's an entire, host of product rollouts and tech and planning going on Outbrain side, which we are already sort of, showcasing in roadshows, etc., across the globe and in India to partners and customers. So to wrap, it's bound to happen. It's not something that gives me sleepless nights. It's something which there will be a dozen solutions to, sort of circumvent, and it's I guess it's for the best.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It does give a lot of hope also, and a lot of things that we need, all as an industry collectively need to learn and apply. On this note, I did have a lot more questions, but unfortunately we are short on time. So on this note, I think we'd like to wrap up the session. Thank you, Shouneel and Siddharth, for being there. It was a very insightful session, and you have given us a lot to chew on. And thank you, our viewers, for being there. Keep those tweets and questions coming. You are making the session way more engaging. Thank you.
Thanks, Loni. Thanks, everyone.
All right. So that was the wrap up of our first panel. We will be moving on to our second panel right now. That is on leveraging the open web amidst crisis and beyond. For the panel, I would like to invite on stage Alan Sharma, Director Sales India, Outbrain. Alan has over 13 years of experience in the Indian media industry. He has handled various roles and responsibilities across both digital and broadcast media companies. Great to have you with us, Alan, today.
Thank you so much, Saloni.
Okay. Next, I'd like to invite on our virtual stage today Sunil Nair, CEO, Fireworks India. For the unacquainted, Fireworks is a SaaS platform that helps businesses bring shoppable short videos and live streams into apps and websites. In the past, Sunil has had a successful stint as the Chief Operating Officer of Altology. Thank you for joining us today, Sunil.
Happy to join.
Great. And finally, last but not the least, I would like to invite on stage Deepak Karnani, Director, OneNative Advertising. With over 15 years of experience in the digital media space, Deepak has been one of the early believers in the potential of native advertising in India. He has also worked with some amazing organizations like NDTV Media, Social Media India Limited, and SMXE Ventures. Happy to have you with us, Deepak. On this note, I'd like to, give it over to the speakers who can take the conversation forward.
Yes, thank you, Saloni, for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Sunil and Deepak, for taking out time to join us on this panel. It's a Pleasure to have you both with us. I mean, we would have loved to do this offline, but I hope that time comes soon, and we'll, by till that time, we'll just settle with the online format. But for those who have just joined us, we are talking about India's digital future, the role of the open web, and how it is becoming a dominant space outside the walled garden tech ecosystem. In this session, we will continue and talk about leveraging open web amid the crisis and beyond. Gentlemen, let's start first with the fact that when this entire news of third wave of COVID started coming in December 2021, everyone understood that this variant is less life-threatening. But at the same time, a lot of businesses had this very bad memory of the first two COVID waves that hit India. There was a general perception that consumers will again shut themselves in their homes, and the outside world might just again go on a pause. Contrary to that belief, the business vitals are looking strong. And on Outbrain, we have seen that the customers have become more active on the open web. And with that influx of users consuming more content and increase in engagement. So Sunil, I'm going to start with you. And my question is that what are some of the broad cyclical trends you are seeing that can benefit marketers on the open web during such time, especially now that the Omicron wave is settling down in India and things are returning back to normal?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I think, I'll start off by saying that, if you take about 800 million people and lock them inside, they're going to find a way to use the internet the most effective way. And I think that has what that is what is being seen right now. The big direct to consumer push which is happening. Every brand that was in the offline world is moving into using the internet, using any means possible. I mean, there is huge demand for one-on-one commerce. There is huge demand for live stream commerce. There's huge demand for video-centric commerce, and I think all of that is a pointer in terms of saying that there was a crisis. March, April, May of the first wave and March, April, May of the last wave was both lessons in the way businesses should look at crisis. It just allows them to step back and do all the things that are necessary. And I think, what happened in China, and I'm going to keep referring to China a lot, SARS in China in about 8 years ago was the point when the inflection happened there, from them moving from being largely offline to completely online. So I'll stop here.
Absolutely. And Deepak, you being on the demand side of things, and you run this very successful native advertising platform ecosystem. What's your view on this?
Oh, yes, I mean, one thing that we've seen is, as Sunil was also saying, the content consumption patterns have changed drastically. There is a lot more content that we see is being consumed online than ever before. And I feel this is one trend that the advertisers have also caught on with, and they're coming up with good amount of content, not just during the launch phases, but on a very sustained basis, right? So this is something that we see come up really well. It's giving the advertisers a very good way to continuously engage with their consumers, and not just in the social media space, but overall as well through own media too, which again is giving them a lot of insights into what the users like, dislikes, and all of which goes into planning their future campaigns as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, even at Outbrain, I think the two things that stood out for us, I think this is the best time for marketers to advertise because more and more users are available online. And D2C, just like Sunil said, is kind of becoming this entire power that's surging. And with the traffic surging and the user engagements going high, I think it's definitely one of the best time. And we often refer to in Outbrain this period as, the media bonanza. It's no longer the end of the financial year because the traffic and engagements are high. as high as possibly October, November period. So if I was a media buyer on the open web, this would be my favorite time to advertise, definitely. Okay, moving on to the next question. The walled garden conversation, and we heard Shouneel and Siddharth really talking a lot about it in the previous panel, is an issue more or less. Marketers are spending more on these closed ecosystem, these walled garden platforms whose prices keep rising. And while they spend, marketers spend a lot of money on these closed ecosystem, it is assumed that they have large user base, and hence, a large part of content is getting consumed. But that's really not the reality. On the contrary, they spend equal or more time on the open web, and which is not plagued with constant changes in algorithm, decisions on third-party cookies, and other issues such as price transparency and more. There's a lot of chatter going around, and to find alternatives outside these ecosystems. So my question to both of you is, do you believe that advertisers are now ready to return back to the open web space? And I'm saying return back, which is far much more free, offers a better advertising experience for everyone. Have you seen similar trends in your business? And Deepak, maybe you could start, and then we'll go to Sunil.
Yes, we've seen that trend, a big yes, in fact, to that question, Alan. We're seeing brands also valuing the open web far more recently, with the number of changes that have happened, as you were saying, in certain algorithms and certain tracking ecosystem that we also spoke about in the previous panel. In fact, I'd like to cite an example of one of the clients that we work with. They're a large mobile brand, an OEM. What we used to see in the past is not just in advertising, but in their entire approach as well. They used to partner with one big e-com marketplace, and the launches used to happen there. Versus what we see now is they have come up with their own D2C channel as well. Something that Sunil was also pointing out for certain brands. Again, an example from China. So brands like these are coming into and utilizing solutions that we offer in terms of native advertising and driving discovery to the new D2C channels that they are creating, because again the ecology is changing so much that they need to have their own data points. They need to have their own D2C platforms as well, and just working with third-party exchanges or marketplaces is not going to be enough anymore.
Yes, absolutely. And Sunil, how's your experience been on Firework?
I think, Firework's entire existence is around the fact that direct-to-consumer brands, e-commerce businesses need to own their data, need to own the customer, build communities, and be able to engage with them on an ongoing basis. That's the reason why we have spent so much amount of time, effort, and money building the platform that we have. Having said that, I mean, the open web versus walled garden debate is kind of a pendulum that's been on for probably 10 years now. There've been lots that is written in, but the fact of the matter is now suddenly there is the stock of Facebook has gone down, or Meta has gone down. People have lost money out there. So it's a bad. Walled garden has been a big bad boy that's been in the making. Now, the fact is that brands now are beginning to realize that unless they own the data, and when I say brands, I also mean publishers. That's a very big component of the ecosystem that the three of us and a lot of us on this discussion, have to coexist with. Publishers have realized that social media is not the place from where the traffic can come in. That's transient. It's not the only place from there. Let's face it. When was the last time you clicked on an ad on any of these social media platforms? When was the last time? There's great amount of noise on short video, on reels. There's a lot of things on that, but people go there for entertainment. They don't go there for engagement. They don't go there to build their decision about buying something, and that is something that I'm hearing from a lot of big brands. I mean, mobile phones. Direct to consumer brands are now asking the logic. They're saying that the walled gardens, Amazon, Flipkart, and all the others are places where they want to be because it's presence. But do I really want to give away 30-40% of my margin out there? Why don't I keep that with myself and bring customers to my owned and operated destinations? because that is more value. And I think that change, it began around 2019, 2018, 2019. And then the pandemic kind of just pushed it over the hill. And now we see massive amount of adoption of technologies that allow brands to build their own community first and the first party data. I mean, that is something where we could have probably a 2-hour session separately.
Yes, absolutely, Sunil. And from our experience in Outbrain, an anecdote that I can give you, that we're experiencing an upsurge in advertisers coming to us just because they're getting the same premium inventory, they're getting fantastic ad experiences, outcome-driven solutions, and our advertisers are in an urgency in a sense. When I speak to them, I feel they're in an urgency to find an alternative and to tap the same user on our network. And I think the advertisers also become a bit smart, or rather they are smart. They've understood that they need to focus more on the lifetime value of the customers on the open web and not just restrict their thinking just to the walled garden. So completely, I think Deepak and you made some very valid points. On that note,
Alan, just sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add this. One of the things which has happened, and this is adding on to what Deepak said and what you're saying, Alan, is that once upon a time there was this saying that 200 million people on a walled garden, it was very, very important. Now, after the geo revolution or the miracle of geo, 200 million people are available in pockets across regional destinations and audience aggregation units. I mean, I call publishers that they are audience aggregators. That's available there. There are islands of 200, 300 million people who are there, and those cohorts are available for advertisers to go out. So open web is much, much powerful. That's probably the reason why Shopify is giving Amazon a run for money. And sorry, I mean, I just thought I should mention that before you jump to the next topic.
No, absolutely. And I think on the open web, the contextual relevance is, I think, something that really comes up. And I know Deepak's been using a lot of open web and native specifically, to scale his business. But coming on to our question 3, we all know that COVID has led to this rapid digital transformation based on this constantly evolving needs of the consumer. A lot of these customers have embraced to the digital way of commerce. So my quick question to you, Sunil, first, and then Deepak to you. Can you give us some advice to the digital first business owners on how they could acquire new customers effectively on the open web? And Sunil, I would like to start with you because you run this very successful business called Firework, which is a leading immersive shoppertainment platform connecting content to commerce for D2C. So what's your experience been, and could you give some advice to these digital first business owners?
I think the first and foremost that we are that I would like to put forth is that our audiences have changed. We are talking about now a swipe and tap audience. This generation has been born with the internet in their hands, and they are users of Tinder and Reels and Instagram and all of that. The language that they understand is not text and images. Text and images is something which is probably more early 2010 or maybe middle 2015 or something like that. Now it's all video, and that's a big change. The language of video is something that digital first businesses have to bring in right in the center. There are brands globally like Interbrands which have built their entire outlook on the way they engage with customers with just video, live stream video. They do 8 to 10 live streams, in a day, which might seem a lot, but if you think about it, those 8 to 10 are catering to yoga moms and people who are just coming out of the gym, people who want to just work out at home and all of that. And that's something that brands will have to start looking at more seriously, and that's the single biggest change that is expected. in the coming 2 years. And once we in video is more native to our way we behave than text and images, and I think that's the single learning that direct to consumer brands and digital first companies that need to really take and run with.
Yes, absolutely. And, I'll pass this question also to Deepak. Deepak, what's your advice? Because, you run this business, which is also kind of creating content and using the open web through native. What's your advice to these digital first business owners?
So, the first thing that we tell our clients is, have a very, very clearly defined TG. I know it sounds very simple and brands and marketers need to know, and this is the first thing that they need to share. The reason why I'm emphasizing on this is that whatever you do thereafter will depend on who your TG is, right? Whether it's content that you're creating or the format of the content, whether it's text or video, as Sunil was saying. If it's text, the language that you will use to write it, the publisher where you'll host it, whether it's own media or earned media, it all starts from first defining who you want to reach out to. And the next thing that we always tell them is, it should be a sustained effort, because, you don't get results overnight, as opposed to certain other mediums, where you have a lot of data upfront and you're just targeting an X kind of people. Here, you're making a lot of inferences. You're looking at interest level targeting, behavioral targeting, contextual targeting. So these are the two things that we always tell our clients that have been it for the medium to long term. Don't just kind of do one campaign and disappear. And most importantly, know who you're talking to, because everything will kind of stem up from there. And while the campaign is going on, just understand what's working, what's not working, make tweaks, do your A/B testing. A small change in creative can also go a big way, give a differential results coming in.
Absolutely. And, I think one of the things that I often keep talking about with a lot of our stakeholders and also our customers is, look at digital advertising like, mutual fund or a stock portfolio, right? You would want to diversify and, reduce your risk eventually. And at Outbrain, with the way Outbrain functions and the way we are built, we're essentially turning static editorial pages into, recommendation engines. We're like almost Netflix for the editorial pages. So personalization of content, recommendation, adding those non-interruptive user experiences. I think there's a lot that the digital first businesses need to explore. And I think on open web, native is one space, which I highly recommend these businesses to explore. We'd love to also take some audience question in case, there are questions. We are happy to take that as well. But before we close, I think we've got just 10 minutes left. Before we close, one last question. What are your 2-pointer quick advice to new advertisers, specifically the ones who come with this low budget and, are wanting to connect digital advertising to sales, who want to test the waters on open web? How should they begin? And Deepak, I'll start with you, because I'm sure you are flooded with such queries, and then we'll go to Sunil, to get his perspective as well.
I would advise them to keep it simple. A lot of times what happens is brands try to do too much together. My advice would be to just keep it simple, do one thing at a time. And because we are talking about the open web and the discovery ecosystem, we still have tools to identify the right TG, right? Whether it is, interest-based targeting on platforms like Outbrain or data segments through DMPs. I would advise that, you use this before you go out and not be completely blind while we are running the campaign. Of course, we get a lot of insights while we are running the campaign, but these are certain things that I'll always ask the first time advertisers at least to be cognizant of.
Yeah, I think I agree with Deepak. I think first-time advertisers, hear so much about performance and magic to happen. It's almost as if you stick a banner on a web page and the banner will come out of the screen, slap the customer, and make them click and buy. That doesn't happen. I mean, that will never happen. One needs to be patient. One has to really understand where you're positioning it. It's not small brands don't have the budgets to go and create roadblocks all over the place and all that. So it has to be more intelligent spending, and there are now tools that are available to get that. I think small brands, yes, they advertise and they spend, and there's awareness that need to be created and all that. But my emphasis really is on smaller brands building communities for themselves. Your own customer who's used it and who's spoken about it in Twitter. I'm not talking about an influencer paid tweet. I'm talking about organic, customer talking about your brand is far more effective and far more valuable than any advertising that you would do. The other one that I want to kind of close on is that brands that are particularly in the lifestyle space, you guys who own the brands are the best promoters. I think one should experiment with live stream a lot more, go live, talk about your brand. There's this lovely brand called Muji in Japan, which uses its own store, managers and the salespeople in the stores to go live every day. And they're doing a phenomenal job because they are passionate about their products, and they're the only ones who can talk about it. No amount of money that you would spend to get a influencer can translate it into anything. So that's something that I would like to leave. I mean, there are brands in the audience, they should try this. And definitely remember that it's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be you do one live stream and tomorrow morning you'll have your year's targets met. That won't happen.
Absolutely. And I often, and both of you have kind of brought out very relevant points. I often call this a slow cook process. You don't want to go out and immediately try and convert a sale. What you want to do essentially is create relevant content, have the right context, use the right data and metrics to amplify that, content, and try and go for a slow cook approach. Have the right creatives in place, have the right articulation in place, get the right headlines, create the right videos, just like Sunil, you said, and over time focus on the lifetime value of that customer. I mean, all of us want quick wins, and there's no harm when you're spending money to aspire to have quick wins, but I think business is a long-term game, and therefore LTV, the lifetime value of customers, is something that's of utmost importance here. So with that, thank you, gentlemen, for your time and for your pointers. Saloni, I'll hand it over to you in case there are some audience questions. We'll be happy to take them up.
Definitely, guys, there are quite a few questions. There are a few questions that do stand out, and allow me just a second to read that out to you. So our first question is for brands who have been acquainted with walled gardens, how can they start exploring open web?
Deepak, you want to take that?
Yeah, in fact, I'll draw in from what you were saying. This is in fact something that Sunil covered in one of his statements, where he was equating what walled garden, the number of users that we had on a Facebook versus what we have on smaller regional pockets right now as well. So this is something really relevant that Sunil also brought out earlier, and which I'd like to reiterate, is that there are so many consumers beyond your walled garden as well. And when we talk about something like we do with Outbrain or native via content discovery, it works in a reverse manner of what search works, right? So it's more of a pull-based approach rather than a push-based approach, where we are promoting solutions and products which the consumer may not really be aware of, right? Which cannot happen through search, because that's not how the platform works. So there's a lot of value in through the open web also that advertisers can get. We have brands which are experimenting with creating content beyond white papers, B2B brands. For example, a brand has come up with their own series of podcasts. These are then again made discoverable through content discovery platforms. So there's a lot that you can do beyond the walled gardens.
Sunil or Anil, if you'd like to take a jab at it.
Totally. I'll give it to Sunil, and then I'll kind of try and wrap it up from Outbrain's side.
Makes sense.
I think if we were to look at Deepak covered it very well. There's nothing that I can add to what Deepak just said. I think the walled gardens, and particularly social media related walled gardens, are not really returning anything back to your consumers in terms of thing. I mean, it's like a black hole that's sucking in all the money and very little comes out of it. And particularly going ahead in the next 5 years or so, it is going to be important for brands which are seriously considering building their own ecosystems to be aware of the fact that they will have to invest in keeping their consumers within their own environment and their own assets. And I think that is going to be an important thing. I mean, search started off as a database of intentions, and if you were on search and your intent was very clear and you could advertise on that. But we have moved 20 years away from there. There is a whole there's a whole ecosystem which has been created beyond. There's a landscape that's got created beyond, and you can pick and choose what are the cohorts that you want to advertise to. I mean, it's not just metro India which is consuming content. There is the rural India which we haven't tapped, and then there is middle India which is regional and which is probably 4 times as large as what the walled gardens offer. So go ahead and explore. I mean, it's a brave new world out there.
Yeah, I think very valid points by both Deepak and Sunil. I'll just round it up by saying that, open web is really the free web, okay? There's no dearth of format content that is available, okay? There are better ad experiences that are available. And I do understand when, brands wants to transition from a closed walled garden to an open web, there are complexities in the mind, because the open web is slightly fragmented, and it's difficult to learn, find, engage, which is the right target audience, what's the meaningful way outside these walled gardens to connect with these users. And publishers on the open web has always had the right content and the audience to compete with these walled gardens, but they haven't been able to compete against the tech of these giants. So on Outbrain, we're essentially trying to change that. We're trying to be their partners to provide our tech, right? So that, like I said earlier in this session, so that we convert their editorial static pages into the Netflix, with the right recommendation, right, machine learning and AI backing it, and using that to ensure that the right content and right advertising is reaching the right consumer, which is contextually relevant to them.
Yeah, that does make a sense. We do have a lot more questions, but unfortunately we are short on time right now. So definitely we'll make a list of those questions and we'll send it forward to you guys, and then we can get back with the answers to our viewers. Thank you once again, all the speakers, for being there. It was genuinely a very insightful session. It's given us a lot more areas and aspects to think about as a community and as an industry. And I would also like to thank our viewers for being there, for all the tweets and the conversations. For all those who've joined a bit late or they want to revisit any part of the session, you can find the recording on our Facebook and LinkedIn pages. You can also find a recap or a wrap-up article of the panel on our Social Samosa website shortly. Once again, thank you for being there, and we will keep coming with newer and interesting webinars going forward.